Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started. I'm gonna let Carlos in if he ends up coming on here. Make sure I'm not missing anything. But we're so excited to have you guys. We had a wonderful first 2 weeks with our Guardianes del Mar, and these are the students that have been working hard, seriously, during the summer. You guys have done an awesome job of being in the classroom with Cindy, so Dr. Elliser, who just logged on with the most adorable baby, has been preparing these guys for the field week, which we just did last week. So these students have done marine debris surveys, they've done forage fish egg surveys, they went out on the boat and experienced some of the marine life that depend on their actions. What else have you guys done? What am I forgetting? So many different things, but next week that's this week, they're gonna put a project together and do a little presentation. So we'll send those to you guys. We are recording them, so if that's okay with Heather and the students, so you guys can see kind of the culmination of their 3 weeks of hard work during the summer. But they've been a blast and some of the best students that I've worked with. So we're super excited to hear from you guys. Thank you so much for spending your time and your day with us. We appreciate that. Do either of you care to go first? Danny?
Nope, I was muted, but I said I don't mind going first.
Are you gonna do a PowerPoint or anything? I think you can.
I do have a little PowerPoint. Is that okay?
Yep. So let me know if you can't share it. I made you co-host, and thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Okay, am I good to go?
Yep.
Okay. I haven't had to share screen in a while, so let me know if something doesn't work.
Okay. I'll let you know when we can see something. Awesome. Looks great.
You got it? Awesome.
Yep.
All right. Then I'm going to jump right into it. Awesome. Well, thanks, guys, for having me again. Yeah, it's an honor just to be here, and thanks again for having me and giving me this opportunity. But yeah, my name is Danny Munoz, and I'm an assistant curator at the Aquarium of the Pacific in Long Beach, California. And as an assistant curator, which is one of the big questions we always get, what does that mean? What's a curator? What's an assistant curator? But what I get to do is supervise a specific gallery of exhibits here at the aquarium. And me and my team are responsible for the care and management of thousands of different animals within that gallery. And today I'm going to share a little bit about that with you here in this presentation. So yeah, just for today, I'll tell you a little bit about kind of how I got into the industry, a little bit of my background. I'll show you guys just briefly some of the cool work that I get to be a part of. And then I'll just touch on some of the things that you all can do if, working at a public aquarium is an ultimate goal, or just getting into some sort of marine biology field. So my family is from the Caribbean island of Cuba. They left there almost 70 years ago in the early 1950s, and ended up settling in Miami, Florida, which is where I was born. Now, growing up near the ocean, I definitely developed a love for the water at a really early age. And I was always just fascinated by marine life and everything related. I kept aquariums at home. I was kind of just self-taught for a long time. I really learned a lot by having aquariums at home. So a little side note, if anyone really if their ultimate goal is to work at a public aquarium, I'd highly recommend keeping aquariums at home, because you really get to learn a lot. But yeah, I was just always curious about what was beneath that surface. And I'd gone snorkeling numerous times, but it really all changed for me when I got my scuba certification. I think it was about 16 or 17. But once I got scuba certified and I was actually able to go down and actually see a lot of these organisms up close, it just completely changed. It was a game changer, and I just got even more curious if that's even possible. So highly recommend getting scuba certified as well if you're not. So like I said, yeah, just that passion and curiosity is really what just drove me. I just always wanted to know more. This is just a few photos, but we went to the beach a lot, of course, and I specifically remember staring out. I can vividly remember staring out at the ocean and just wondering, what the heck is out there. And it was just like this thing in my mind I just had to know. So that you'll probably hear passion quite a few times from me today, because that it all starts there. So you guys, I assume, have that passion already because you're doing what you're doing, but just keep that going, because that's really what kind of drives everything. So just kind of in a nutshell, just the way it all happened for me. This is very brief here. It's a lot more complicated than this, but again, developed that passion at an early stage in my life, for marine life. I got a degree in biology, and I kind of just, got the fundamentals down. And then I got my first job at an aquarium in Miami. I spent about 7 years there, and I took full advantage and tried to learn as much as possible. And then after about 7 years at that aquarium, the opportunity to come work here at the Aquarium of the Pacific opened up. And I jumped on it because up to that point, my background was Caribbean, Atlantic. I really had limited exposure to the Pacific, so it was really intriguing. So that job opened up in 2007, and I moved out here with my wife. And we've been here now almost 14 years, still at the aquarium, of course, and I've been in the public aquarium industry for over 20 years altogether. But I'm still doing what I love today, and I wouldn't change a thing. Every day is, and I'll show you some photos here in a second, but every day is something new and exciting. So it's never a dull moment in the public aquarium industry. So just a little info on the Aquarium of the Pacific, if you haven't visited us ever, but we're located in Long Beach, California. Like I said, we're right on the water. So it really is just a perfect location for an aquarium. We opened back in 1998. We have just over 1.5 million gallons of water in our building. So I think it kind of makes us in the top 5 or 6 largest aquariums in the country. We have over 12,000 animals in our collection. Those are displayed over about 115 different exhibits. And we have about 1.6 million people that visit us annually. And of course, that's under normal circumstances. With COVID right now, everything's kind of all wacky, as you can imagine. But normally that's about what we get annually, which is great. Those are all, when we talk about visitors at the aquarium, we see those as opportunities, people that we can educate and inspire with our exhibits and our animals. So that 1.6 million is, we want that number to keep growing, because it just means we're touching more people and reaching out to more folks. And we have about, again, under normal circumstances, about 300 paid staff and about 1,000 volunteers, which I'll talk about a little bit later, our volunteer program. Oh, this is not moving. There we go. All right, so I thought I'd take a moment here and just share some really cool pictures with you guys of some of the work that I get to do. You can try to find me in all these photos. I'm in all 4 of these. But yeah, just like I said, it's never a dull moment at the aquarium. It's always something cool and exciting. On the top left there, we're actually doing artificial insemination in a blacktip reef shark. On the top right there, we're just doing a physical exam on actually our largest fish at the aquarium. But that's our reticulated whiptail stingray. And you can see we're getting a measurement on her. Our vet is actually in the water doing an ultrasound. One thing you'll notice there is probably about a dozen people in that photo. But it takes a village sometimes. Our team, we couldn't do what we do without our team. So I just wanted to give credit there to everyone back here at the aquarium. Bottom left photo is actually that was taken last week. That's us out in the field doing some field work. So I mentioned we're right on the coast. Huge advantage for an aquarium. Obviously, we have 3 boats and we can get out and do a ton of field work. We can actually go out and see some of the local habitats. We bring that knowledge back and we can actually put that into our exhibits, which hopefully will inspire our guests. So it's just a long process. And then on the bottom right there, I don't know if you guys can see in that blue stretcher, but we're getting ready to do an exam on our male sand tiger shark. That's our biggest shark at the aquarium. So we're just getting him in the stretcher and getting him ready for his exam. So yeah, never a dull moment, really exciting. It's fun. It's really the best way to say it. And then one of the most rewarding things, of my job is definitely having the opportunity to be involved in a lot of conservation and research projects, which the aquarium is involved in. I'll just mention a couple here that I'm directly involved in, but the two photos on the top there, that's actually our white abalone team. And we're involved in a project where we actually spawn white abalone, which are critically endangered. And then we raise them and we actually take them back out into the wild and outplant them. So that's really exciting, rewarding work. We just started outplanting them recently. Of course, the pandemic kind of got in the way. So we're excited to get back out and continue this project. And of course, again, you can just see it takes a team there and a village to do things like this. The photo on the bottom is a similar project, except we're doing this with corals. I've actually been fortunate enough to go to Guam. This photo is taken in Guam, but I've been fortunate enough to go to Guam about 3 times now, I think. And this is a coral restoration project where it's similar to the abalone. We actually spawn the corals and then we take the juvenile corals back out to the wild, and we are outplanting them on some of the reefs that are just in need of restoration. The reefs in Guam, like many reefs across the world, are just dealing with a lot of global impacts that I'm sure you guys are all aware of. Yeah, just some more cool photos. These are the coral project. It's hosted by a company named Seacor, if you've heard of that. But these are the tiles that we actually grow the little baby corals on. So there's juvenile corals on those tiles, and that's what we actually take back out and put right back on the reef. And then we come back, hopefully year after year, and watch those corals grow. And then photo on the bottom, we also get to do just fun, cool things like take pictures with penguins and walk around the aquarium and just interact with all our animals. It's always good for us and good for the animals for enrichment, of course. So I mentioned volunteering earlier. One of the questions we always get here at the aquarium that we hear from our guests or school kids that are visiting is, how did you get this job? How did you get started? And of course, the first thing you have to have is that passion, right? That passion that I mentioned earlier. Got to start there. And then once you have that, it's, you get your education, you get your solid background down. And then the best advice I can give to someone is to really just try to get your foot in the door at your local aquarium. And volunteering is definitely one of the best ways someone can do that. We have, like I said, over 1,000 volunteers at the aquarium, and we would not be able to operate at all if it wasn't for them. So we give a lot of credit to our volunteers. And it's never too early to start. Photo on the bottom there is, those are some of our volunteens. So we have a group of volunteens that come in and they start volunteering at an early age and just get a ton of experience, and they can, use that to kind of drive their career a little bit. And then, yeah, just like I said, get your foot in the door and network. This industry, public aquarium industry, and just the whole marine biology industry, it's a lot of networking. So try to get your foot in the door and get to know a lot of people, definitely. All right, and with that, I think I'm just gonna wrap it up. But I'll just leave you all with a quote here that I used to hear a lot when I was a kid. Some of you might be familiar with it, and you can see it there on the bottom. Lo que está para ti, nadie te lo quita. And some of you know what that means. It just really means if you're passionate about something, and if it's meant for you, then no one can take that from you. So if this is what you really want to do, keep after it and achieve those goals. And lastly, I'll close by just saying thank you to the team here at the aquarium, because I know I said it a few times already, but it takes a village and it takes a really strong team to accomplish everything we do here at the aquarium. It's a lot of fun, but it's definitely a lot of work as well. And we wouldn't be able to do it without the strong team that we have. So thank you to them. And then thank you to all of you guys again for having me here and giving me a chance to share with you what I do.
Danny, thanks so much. That was awesome. That was so much fun to see your work, and super exciting that you said it was a stingray?
It was a big stingray that we're doing an exam on. Yeah, she's about 400 pounds. So I don't have a photo of it, but we weighed her at that same procedure, and she was about 400 pounds.
Wow, how cool is that? So Heather, would you like students to ask questions one by one or at the end after everyone goes?
Does anybody have a question that they want to ask now?
I can.
Awesome. Hi, Victor.
What's what's your favorite sea creature?
Oh, great question, Victor. I'm going to go with sharks. Definitely sharks is what I gravitate towards.
Have you swam with them or do you?
I have swam with them. Yep. Yeah, just several different species. We have a lot of white sharks off our coast here. So we actually do not direct work with the university here, but indirectly we kind of do some work with them. And they have receivers all up and down our coast where white sharks are pinging. Some of the fish that we've released also have transmitters. So we work closely with some of those same receivers. So we do get to kind of do some shark, I don't want to say research, but some conservation work for sure.
And then Carla asked here in the chat, how does spawning work?
So it depends what animals we're talking about, but at least the two that I mentioned there are the white abalone and the coral project. So just really briefly, spawning is a whole topic which I could talk about for hours, right? But for the abalone, we actually spawn the abalone ourselves. We do that in a controlled setting. So we take the males and females and we can actually induce spawning in that species. So we induce spawning, and that's done a couple of different ways, but we induce spawning and then we capture the gametes. So we get the sperm from the males, the eggs from the females, and then we cross fertilize, and then we actually do the rest of the work. Once the animals spawn, they're done. We take over from there. And then for the corals, it's a little bit different because the corals actually are they're on their own schedule. So the way we spawn corals, actually we don't spawn corals, I should say that. We actually go out, corals only spawn at night, and it's a certain time of the year depending on where you are in the world. So Guam, where I was, happens to be in July for the species we were working with. So we knew that already. So we schedule our trip around that. So, but basically we put big nets over the corals out in the ocean. And once they spawn, we capture those gametes in a little cup. And then we get back to shore. And at that point, it's similar to the abalone. We've got, actually the gametes, we have to separate the sperm from the eggs. So the corals have an egg bundle where the sperm and the eggs are together. We actually have to separate them, and then we can cross-fertilize and do all that work in a lab setting. So a lot of it's done in a lab setting. It's a very controlled environment. We want to keep things consistent. That's basically spawning in a nutshell.
So coral are sexual, they're not asexual?
There's both.
Okay.
So corals can reproduce through both methods, and you have basically what you call broadcast spawners. And so I'm sorry, you have sexual and asexual, like you said. And then when you get down to the sexual, the ones that reproduce sexually, you have broadcast spawners that actually release their gametes into the water, which are the ones we were working with. And then you have what's called brooders that actually fertilize inside of their own skeleton. And they actually release an already formed baby coral. So there's no fertilization that needs to happen in the water column. The brooders release baby corals that actually crawl around and look for a place to settle, and that's where they spend the rest of their lives.
And the ones, and then I'm done, I promise, that release the gametes, do they just hope they find them floating in the water, or do they have a swimming tail?
Yeah, so when they release their gametes, like I said, it's called a little egg bundle, and in that bundle you have sperm and eggs. And what happens is those are full of lipids, so they're really buoyant. So they go to the surface. And it's a really cool, I wish I would have put a picture of it, but in the morning after a spawn, there's this really big orange slick in the ocean, and it's all the gametes. So basically they float to the surface and the waves crash, and just all the movement of the ocean breaks apart those bundles. And then sperm and eggs from different animals are just cross-fertilizing. It's a whole, I mean, when these gametes are in the water, you get thousands of different animals coming to munch on that. So it's an opportunity for, like, you just see this whole habitat. Everyone's kind of getting their fair share. The corals are trying to, have babies. Other animals are feeding on those. So it's kind of cool to just sit back and watch all this. But yeah, the corals can't self-fertilize. So it's what we call an orchestrated event. So when a coral is spawning, all the corals of that species are spawning all across those reefs. And they know that. Like, they're so in tune to the moon. They know exactly when to spawn. It's just, yeah, I'd almost need like another hour to really explain it. But I think that kind of hopefully answers your question.
Yeah, I wouldn't think that people or animals would enjoy eating coral. It seems crunchy, but I guess with the lipids.
Yeah, I mean, at that point, they're not even crunchy. They're just like, there's tiny little just
Eggs.
lipids floating around. Yeah, it's just fat and protein at that point for other animals.
Let's see here. I know Adrian has a hard cutoff. Danny, do you have a cutoff if we let her speak and then come back? Because we have questions for you still.
No, totally. I'm here. Yep.
Do you mind sticking around after she presents?
Absolutely. I'll be here.
Okay, thanks, Danny. So students, if you have more questions for Danny, write the name Danny in the question, and then we'll have opportunity to ask questions as well. So Adrian, you want to go ahead?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Following Danny is going to be a tough act to follow. I mostly sit in office all day, so I'm sorry in advance. No, my name is Adrian Elisea. I'm the Deputy Director at Green 2.0. I'll tell you a little bit more about what we do in a second. But yeah, my family is from Puerto Rico. My grandparents left there in the 50s. They settled in New York and New Jersey, like a lot of other Puerto Ricans did. And I grew up in New Jersey and spent my whole life there until college. So I think I'm a little bit different than some of your other panelists, just because I never envisioned my life or sort of career in the environmental movement. In fact, I just got here very recently, so a little bit of a different sort of journey. So I guess I'll start from, I went to college in Baltimore, and it's very close to DC, and I was always really interested and actually sort of like youth policy and figuring out how I could help young people through policy change. And so there was a program in my college that allowed young people who were interested in like doing a DC semester to do a semester in DC. And so I took classes at our graduate school and interned for my senator from my home state. And so I had a pretty not great experience in that first experience in my senator's office. There were a lot of interns. They didn't give us a lot of good work, but I found myself being really interested in the ways that policy can help change the lives of people. And so that's where I stuck there. I graduated from college. Afterwards, I applied for this fellowship called Running Start, which is the fellowship that brings women who are interested in running for office one day to be interns or fellows in female members of Congress's office. I was paired with a member of Congress from California. And while I was in the office, I got exposed to a lot of different issues. And one of the big issues that I handled while I was in the office was actually, again, foster care issues. So issues related to families and really supporting young people who were in the foster care system. And so I helped write policies. I helped pass legislation through our office. And I worked with a lot of other members of Congress and offices to push legislation forward. So I ran something called the Congressional Caucus on Foster Youth. It's basically a caucus in Congress is basically a chance for different members of Congress, different senators to get together and talk about how they could actually write legislation that helps young people in the foster care system. So that was a really interesting experience for me. And I really enjoyed just seeing how when folks band together and agree on things, they can actually get a lot accomplished. And so seeing really important issues related to the foster care system get changed in Congress was really, really cool for me. Capitol Hill is a really interesting place. And I always suggest that folks who are interested in environmental policy think about doing congressional internships. They have PAGE programs, they have programs for high school and college students. So it's a really cool opportunity to figure out whether doing environmental policy is for you or not. Anyway, so I spent quite some time in my congressional office, and then decided that I wanted to try something different and went to go work for an organization called the Center for American Progress, which is basically an organization that works to put forth policies about a lot of different issues, about issues related to immigration and the environment, and basically every issue you can think of, they have a thought on. And so they write policy papers explaining research for why they think specific legislation and policies should be that way. And so I worked on communications and events, and so really helping policy teams figure out how to basically translate research into like how everyone else in the world speaks. And so figuring out how we talk about really important issues in ways that everyone can understand. And so that was my first sort of introduction, I will say, to the environmental movement. Much later, again, I think a lot of my other colleagues, and I worked with the environmental team there to figure out how to translate some of these environmental issues into ways that people could really understand. And so it was really interesting and just a completely new space for me. And so that definitely sparked my interest. And then I actually went to go work for a place called Mentor National for the last 5 years before I got to my job now. And Mentor is an organization that helps to increase the quantity and quality of youth mentoring relationships throughout the country. And so we worked to make sure that the federal government was funding programs and lots of different types of programs, right? Programs that are specific to Latino youth, programs that are about STEM, programs that are about every basically issue that you can think of, and supporting young people and ensuring that they have access to a caring adult who could help support them on their journeys, whether that be personal or academic or professional. And so I worked on policy there representing basically youth mentoring to Congress and the administration. And then about 6 months ago, I have always been really interested in the work of diversity and figuring out how every field can diversify really intentionally, because in a lot of spaces, and especially in the environmental spaces, they're still very predominantly white, and the voices of folks of color and Latino folks in particular are not listened to. We don't have seats at the table. And so Green 2.0, where I work now, is an organization that actually works to increase racial and ethnic diversity within the environmental movement. And so we work with environmental organizations, and we encourage them and partner with them to think about how practices and policies of their organizations could be more inclusive to staff, how they could figure out how they could better support their staff. And we do this primarily through something called our transparency report card. And so every year we actually survey environmental organizations, and we ask them to provide data on their staff. And so we ask them questions that are, about their racial and ethnic backgrounds. And so we find out from them, you have a 500-person staff, but you only have 2 Latino people on your entire 500-person staff, or you only have 2 folks who identify as Middle Eastern, or whatever those things are. And we help them identify those gaps and figure out why they do not have staff of color at their organizations, and really help them figure out, especially at the senior leadership level, which is often what happens, right, is that we see that it's not that Latinos and other communities of color don't have an interest in conservation and environmental issues. It's there's often barriers with organizations, and they'll often hire folks at lower sort of entry level jobs, but it's much harder as you get sort of up and up to get to those senior level positions. So we try to break down those barriers and work with organizations to do that. I have, again, a much less interesting job than Danny, in that I help create this report card. I work with environmental organizations, so everyone from, or big organizations like Sierra Club and Environmental Defense Fund and Earth Justice, to very small environmental justice organizations, and help figure out how they can ensure that they are really bringing the lens of racial equity and diversity to their internal policies. So they're changing their handbooks, they're thinking about human resources, but also how they could think about how they're bringing people in to the environmental movement, right? What are their external resources? Do they provide their website or their resources in other languages? Are they thinking about who they are communicating with? Who are they partnering with? Are they partnering with organizations that are smaller than them, and that have, that are with organizations that have folks who are from underrepresented groups as well? I also manage our operations and our day-to-day. We have a fellowship program where we have young people for a paid fellowship for 3 months come in and help support our research work as well. And it's a really wonderful fellowship program, I think. I help write grants to foundations to get funding for organizations to provide these kinds of DEI trainings and opportunities for their staff as well. So, I always tell folks this, I really come from the sort of youth development lane, but it's been really amazing and interesting to be able to bring that lens to the environmental movement, because I think it's really important that we remember that young people are the future of this movement, and that we need to keep working towards ensuring that there is change happening in organizations so that young people who are really leading the way are able to do that at organizations. So, I'm able to meld both my experiences for young people with this role as well. In terms of any sort of suggestions or thoughts I have about what can help you be sort of successful is just be authentic and be yourself and be okay with telling your story, and knowing that you'll always have a community of people that you can rely on and talk to when you sometimes might feel that you're not always in the space that you need to be in. And then I think, especially Danny said this too, but if you're ever interested in environmental policy, that don't be afraid to network with people. It's really important. It's how folks get jobs. It's how your relationship builds. I know it's kind of a scary thing sometimes to be like, why do I have to go talk to this person on Zoom for 20 minutes? But it's really, really helpful for you to tell people what your interests are really early on, what you might want to do, because that could lead to internships or fellowships, and in the future, jobs that'll really help you. So that's what I'll say there. And then, we do have our fellowship program. So if later on you are interested, we're happy to do that. And as an organization, we spend a lot of time trying to figure out and really actively connecting young people of color to internships. And so if you're interested in internships in the future and you want to first start, we are definitely here to be helpful and be able to send you to organizations and tell you more about different options. So please reach out to us, and just thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much. You said yours wasn't as interesting, but I think it is. It's a totally different aspect that's equally as important as what Danny does. So thank you for showing another whole side of ways to get involved in the environmental movement with support, from people's story and background, for sure. So students, do you guys have any questions? Adrian has to sign off. You're on the East Coast, right? Yeah. So she has to probably go eat dinner and do normal things that people do in the evenings. But any questions about what she does or more about getting involved, you can put them in the chat or unmute yourself and ask.
I have a quick question, and I also just want to say I appreciate so much you sharing your background. And actually, a big part of this program has been peer mentorship. Actually, the students have been working with college student mentors for the last couple of weeks. So I super passionate also about working with youth. Can you just explain really quickly what is a fellowship and what is an internship? And then Carla would love to know what's the hardest part of your job?
Sure. Yeah. So our fellowship is basically a paid opportunity for young people to come work for us on a part-time basis. So we are primarily based in DC, but we actually hire fellows or interns from all over the country. So you can be remote from your home, and you have 3 months with us where you learn about Green 2.0 and you help contribute to our work. So our fellows will help with things like collecting surveys and data from our partner organizations. We help train them so that they are able to actually have meetings directly with our partners and talk to our partners about Green 2.0. They help write social media for our organization. They help review and read resources that we are creating. They help come up with different ideas for our blog. They basically help us with every part of the organization. And so it's really just a really good opportunity to learn more about a field, I will say too. Fellowships and internships, they give you an opportunity to get a sort of a sneak peek of different places and different organizations. And I think they're really helpful because you're able to figure out, well, okay, I spent 3 months at this organization. Maybe that's not what I want to do later. And I know that I don't want to do, environmental policy. I know that I want to go the conservation route. You get to figure out and learn what you want from that. And our fellowship, I think, is a little unique in the sense that, one, we allow anyone to be remote, always, not just during COVID. And two, I think more and more, I'm happy about this. Organizations are starting to pay their interns and fellows as well. A lot of organizations still, because of their budgets, offer this as sort of like an academic credit. If you're in college, you can use, or they offer it unpaid. But there are lots of folks who do offer stipends and payment for your work. And so, I would definitely encourage you to start, look and think about organizations you might want to volunteer with or intern with as well in the future. Oh, and then someone asked, what's the hardest part of my job? The hardest part of my job is, we are an organization that works to educate environmental organizations about diversity, but at the same time, we have to hold them accountable for their work. And so it's sometimes hard when you have to sort of educate and support organizations and train them about diversity and equity. But at the same time, if you find out, which happens very often, especially recently, publicly, that an organization is not treating their staff of color very well, that you also have to publicly talk about it. And it's hard because, at most organizations, it's not all staff who are not helping with diversity. It's often just some staff, and you make really good partners and friends with folks at those organizations, but you have to sometimes talk about what they need to do to improve their work publicly. And that's just not always a fun thing to do. You want to make sure that you're, able to maintain and keep good relationships. And so it's hard sometimes when you have to be sort of a watchdog for what's happening in the environmental movement.
Yeah, that's awesome though. Thanks for all you do with that, for sure. Any other questions from anyone? And if you guys think of something to, could you put your stuff in there in the chat, a link, you guys can check it out. Oh, Nelson asked, how long did you do this?
So I've been at Green 2.0 for about 6 months now. So that's how long I've been here.
And then we will have our next speaker, our final speaker, Bea. If no other questions, but if you guys think of questions, just add them to the chat. Will you stay on, Adrian, until you have to go, or are you going to head out now? So you'll sign off at 3. Okay. All right. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Adrian. That was awesome. And Bea, we look forward to hearing your presentation. Thanks for being here.
Awesome. Could I have rights to share my screen? Awesome. Let me see if I can get my PowerPoint. Awesome. Cool. Hi everyone. My name is Bea, or Beatriz. I'm from Venezuela, and I'll talk to you a little bit about my tech journey. So a little bit about me. I got to go to school in Wisconsin, but the reason that I got to go to school in Wisconsin, it was because when I was in high school, I had to take a test in order to go to the university that I wanted to go in Venezuela. And I happened that I got 97.82 points, and I had to get 98 in order to go to the university. So it was only one question difference, but I didn't make it. I didn't make the cut. So because of that, it was really devastating at the time, because I really wanted to go to that school, but it didn't work out. So what happened is I studied abroad in Germany, learn a new language, happened to experience and fall in love even more with technology. when I'm here in Europe. And then I get the opportunity to have scholarships that will pay for my education or help pay for the education. And I landed in Wisconsin. The only thing I knew about Wisconsin before coming was one show, that 70 show. Aside from that, I had no idea like about anything about Wisconsin. The closest I've been was like New York and Florida, but that's not really Wisconsin. So I had an awesome time. I get to learn how to code, how to talk to computers, how computers work, destroy a computer and build it back up. And that was pretty exciting. I don't know if any of you are interested in computers or not. I know that the previous two talks were completely different, but it was awesome to hear from both of you and what you do, and thank you for doing that. So that's what happened to me. And then I had the opportunity to do 2 internships. I had the opportunity to do an internship at an insurance company where I worked on the program management side, and then where I worked on the technology side. So by the time I graduated, I applied and got super lucky. I was able to get hired at Microsoft, and I've been at Microsoft for 7 years now. So it was very fun to do that. Obviously nerve-wracking that a lot of the folks that were interviewing were not Latinos, or at least not born outside of the US, which is my scenario. But I was in, and that has been, a great blessing, and I'm super grateful for the opportunities that I've been given. And then the other more fun stuff that I'll talk to you in a little bit is I have a side passion, and my passion is to teach kids how to code. So I've founded my own nonprofit that's called Nuevo Foundation. And the reason for that is because I did not have the opportunity when I was your age to learn how to code. I learned how to code in college, as I mentioned, and I want to make sure that if I can and I'm able to teach as many kids, especially those that come from underrepresented backgrounds, that they learn how to code. That doesn't mean that you're going to be a software engineer. If you want, awesome. But at least that you know what computer languages are, and see that you can do so much more. And if you can tie your passion with tech, I think that will give you a lot of great tools for your future. In terms of what I do, so I mentioned I work in Microsoft. Microsoft is a huge company, and then there is one department that's called the cloud, or Azure. And what I do in there is I get a bunch of data. And when I say a bunch of data, we're talking about millions of rows of data that comes every hour. And so with that data, we aggregate those things and then make them be more of a readable thing. So for example, if I get a bunch of data that means nothing, we aggregate it and make sure that it means something and give it to another department. But the reason we do that is so every Microsoft customer, that could be Coca-Cola, that could be Walmart, that could be any customer that uses Microsoft Cloud, gets charged for whatever they're using. So we're reading the usage from all the services that the customer is using, making sure that those get all trapped into some sort of data that makes sense or information, and then get sent to the customer so they get their receipt. So if you ever heard about the term about big data, that's pretty much what I work on and what I get to do. And so the part of compliance is just making sure that it meets all the standards, that it meets government requirements, that it meets international standards as well. So that's part of the work that I do. Cool. In terms about Nuevo Foundation, what we do is our mission is to inspire kids to be curious, confident, and courageous by discovering the world of STEM. STEM stands for science, technology, engineering, and math. And this is our little mascot that's called Newbie. What we've been able to do, so this started 3 years ago in April 2018, was when it got formed. We've been able to do our workshop of coding in 31 countries. That includes pretty much all countries in South America, a lot of countries in the Caribbean. We've been able to teach coding workshop and virtual sessions in Spanish, in English, and then in Hindi as well. And we have 3 parts, where 3 chapters where we focus on. So we have the one in Redmond that focuses in the Americas. We have one in India, and we have one also in Australia. And the kids that we reach out or tend to reach out to, or what we try, are kids that are underrepresented, not just Latino, Hispanic, but underrepresented in any way, shape, or form. And then when we do the events, we survey them just to make sure that what the content that we're teaching or what we're explaining makes sense. And we have very good surveys back in the sense that kids are more interested into STEM and they believe that they learn how to code. In terms of what we do, in case any of you is interested or are interested in learning how to code, it's all free. It's in our website, and I'll give you that website at the end of the slide. But there's coding workshops. So for example, if you ever heard about Python or C# or HTML or JavaScript or anything like that, those are what we teach in terms of how to talk to the computers and make them do whatever you want. The virtual sessions, which will be what we're doing right now, like sharing the story. And then speaker series is like if there's a big event and how we plug in. So just some of the pictures. So the first picture is part of the Nuevo team. At that point, all of us worked at Microsoft, but this is volunteering work. Then the other two pictures is like teaching other girls how to code. And the picture at the end, or the below one, we got to bring 100 students from Yakima, Washington. I don't know if anybody here is from Yakima, but we brought in for Hispanic Heritage Month. We got to bring them to Microsoft and teach them how to code. And I would love to partner with you maybe next year if you're interested in coming to Microsoft, see how the tech world is. And if that's something that you like, it might be, it might not be, but at least something to try on. More than happy to. And then the last part that I have in here is my advice is to continue learning. Some of you might be in middle school, some of you might be in high school, but what I've learned is it doesn't matter what stage in your life you're on, there's always room for continued learning or to relearn or to learn something else about those topics that you are passionate about or that you're working on or that you want to improve yourself on. It doesn't necessarily stop once you graduate from high school or from college. That's something that I think if you take it with like that happiness, like, hey, okay, I don't know, but I'm gonna learn. I think it's easier path forward. The second thing is to find your passion. So my passion is to help kids to learn how to code. Also, my passion is how can we bring more Latino, Hispanic to the tech world? Because clearly we are the biggest minority. So you have an idea in terms of numbers in the US, we are less than 1% of Latino women in tech. So how do we change that picture? That's what I'm very passionate about, bringing underrepresented folks to tech. But whatever your passion is, let's say your passion is sports. So how do you merge tech with the sports? Your passion is music. Then how do you merge the two? Your passion is helping the community, or your passion is dancing. Whatever it is that you're passionate about, I'm almost certain that there is a way to tie tech with that passion. So if your passion is rescuing whales, I don't know if Amy, you get a chance to talk to Gracie or not, but I have an awesome friend that she is a software engineer, and her job is to keep track of the whales through technology in Orca Island, just to make sure that the whales are, I'm going to misquote this, but that they are reproducing the way that they're supposed to, that they're living the life that they're supposed to. So if your passion is animals or the environment, there are ways that tech can be embedded into those works as well. And the last thing that I have is here is be who you are and do what you love. Anything that it is that's your passion or that you love, there's always opportunity for do it. And I think that don't forget, I'm just gonna plus one on what Adrian shared. Like, don't forget where you come from and who you are. I think that makes life easier if you know what you stand for, and if you can match it with something that you love, I think that you will be pretty good for your career. Then, okay, I have one more slide. So this one, this is a fun story. So there is this conference called Grace Hopper. Grace Hopper Conference is the largest conference of women in tech in the world. And Microsoft had a contest where you had to submit your quote. And my quote got chosen. 3 quotes were chosen, and then it was written on all the shirts. So what I mean by that is rewrite the rules of the world. So if you don't like something the way that it's made today, you can change it. You have the power. All of you have the power to change that. If you think about Uber, that was unthinkable. You know, that changed us. If you think about Airbnb, if you think about Snap, Instagram, anything that you're into, it's possible. So if there's something that you would love to be changed, you can do that. Just make sure that you know that you're empowered to do something with the skills that you have. And what else do I have here? So in case any of you wants to stay in touch, I'm more than happy. And if any of you would like to learn how to code, nuevofoundation.org, there's a bunch of workshops, again, all for free. All you need is computer, internet access, and maybe an email, depending on the workshop that you choose. But it's well explained in the way that you can do it, or you can do it with your parents, you can do it with your cousins, with your little sister, whomever, so you can learn and see if you like it. And with that, I'll just end this. So thank you so much.
But yeah, that was terrific. Thank you so much. How cool to hear all of your backgrounds that are so different, but so important in so many different ways and changing the world. All three of you for sure, for the better. So some students said that they were in the picture with the yellow shirts.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, 3 of them, I think. So that's awesome. So any questions? Okay, so Alan says, what's the hardest part about coding?
Yeah, so the hardest part about coding, I think, is at the beginning, because sometimes we're used to talk to people. So right now we're communicating in English, and it's anything I said, even if I have a thick accent, which I don't know that I'll get rid of it, but you'll understand. So when you're starting to code, it might be a little bit weird to how you write to computers. But once you figure it out, or keep trying, or keep doing other projects, I think things start to make sense. That would be something that I suggest, is like, if you try coding, let's say you take one of the Nuevo workshops, or you go to code.org or Code Academy, or any platform that you would like to go, it might be that you're at the beginning, you're like, oh, wow, this is super hard. Like, I don't know that I can do it. What I suggest is like, you try it again, and if you're seeing it from this angle, try seeing it from that angle, and then from the other angle, until it makes sense. Sometimes it might get one time and you get it, and awesome. But sometimes it might take 3, 4, 5, 10, whichever amount of times it'll take you. I think it's a lot of perseverance and resilience for you to do it. But I think it's possible. And there's also Google. You can Google almost anything in code. So if you're super stuck, just Google what you need, and that will take you out of there.
Yeah, there's a quote that I love that it says, everything is difficult before it is easy. So it's getting past
Absolutely.
that difficult part, and then it's easy.
Yep.
The next question is, have you ever met Bill Gates?
Actually, like, not face to face, but my second day at Microsoft, we got to see Steve Ballmer, which was the previous CEO, Satya Nadella, who's the current CEO, and Bill Gates, who's the first CEO. So it was super, super cool to see him. And I have the opportunity to see him on the 2 times in conference. I've never had the opportunity to talk to him personally, but I was able to see it. So for me, it was very exciting to see the person who founded the company that I'm working on and have given me so many opportunities.
Yeah, great question. Do you guys send each other like birthday cards in coding, like in code?
Do we do that?
Yeah, wouldn't that be fun? You could make like
we can, yeah, that can be, that's totally doable. We don't do it, but like that, yeah, we can make it work.
Nelson asks, what classes do you need to code?
So that depends on the high school or the middle school that you are on. If your high school or middle school offers some sort of introduction to computer science, introduction to computer languages, CS 101, if any of those are offered, do take them. If your school for some reason doesn't offer them, there's multiple resources. So of course I'm going to tell you Nuevo, because that's the one that we've created. But if you don't want to, there's code.org. You can start, like, let's say that you are 12 years old. Maybe you want to start with the classes that are for 6 years old, and then you build your way up. Or you can go however way. I just want to make sure that since you don't have an instructor, that you start for something and then you build up your concepts. There's also Khan Academy, there's code.org. So there's multiple organizations. If your school have it, I think that's easiest, because you'll have someone that you could ask questions and they'll reply to you in a timely manner. But if not, there's a lot of resources online. And if something that you find at Nuevo and it doesn't make sense, send us an email on the website and we'll get back to you and help you figure it out.
Awesome. Next question. What part of your job do you enjoy the most?
Cool. So what I enjoy is that something that I do or my team does have the repercussion in so many customers around the world. So I think that tech is one of those fields that you might do something on your desk. So I'm sitting right now here in Madrid, Spain, and the work that I'm doing, it's gonna get, everybody in the world will have access to it. I think that's pretty powerful. It's something that attracts you. So that is something that makes me very excited. The other thing that makes me very excited is that we have a community of Latinos and Hispanics at Microsoft that's called Hola. And that really makes me feel a little bit at home, that I can speak my own language, that I can eat my own food, that I can feel people that I can relate one way or another. And that is super fun. I don't know that all the companies have it, but at least I'm thankful that Microsoft has that. And then the third one that I think all of you are gonna like is whenever we go back to office, or if we go back to the office, there's always in every floor some sort of entertainment. So you can call it like air hockey, you can call it like ping pong, you can call it like an Xbox lounge, or anything like that. And you get free sodas, free drinks, free coffee, anything like that. I think that to me is cool. You might have a different point of view, but I think that is something that tech has to offer, that kids tend to like it. And I'm a kid at heart, so I do enjoy playing Xbox from time to time.
Yeah, awesome. Next question. Do you ever get overwhelmed working at Microsoft?
Overwhelmed? Yes. So I think that that depends on your own, how you want to set the boundaries. There's a lot of flexibility when it comes to tech. So for example, I was able to work remote from the Dominican Republic this summer. And right now I'm able to work from Europe for like a couple of months. And I don't know that how many jobs can give you that flexibility with Microsoft. Now, am I overwhelmed? I think if you are able to set boundaries and say, okay, this is the work that I'm going to deliver, they can give me a list of 20 things. But I have to understand first what's the priority. You might have 10 exams on next week, but what are the priorities? And if you prioritize on those that are more important and the rest might not make it, but you did the thing that it's gonna have the most value, I think it's okay. Because I would have work probably for the rest of my life, in the sense of the things that all I have to do. And so I cannot just not sleep, not eat, not have fun. But what I do every day is I have a notepad, you cannot see it, and then I write what's my priorities and what are the things that I need to do. So I'm going to bed pretty soon after this call. That doesn't mean that tomorrow when I wake up, I'm not gonna keep doing my list. And they might be that my manager can come tomorrow and say, hey, by the way, that list that you have, now we have a new list, and you continue to do. And I guess what I'm trying to say with this is make sure that you understand what you can do and what are your boundaries, because you are the only one that can set those expectations. And I think that once you are transparent with what you can deliver and at what pace, you have a good relationship, versus saying that you can do it all when we all know that we have limitation and there's time and there's life as well.
Next question. How do you get into Microsoft?
How do you get into Microsoft? So the first thing is graduate from high school. You do not have to go to college if you don't want to, as long as you learn how to code. If coding is what you're looking into. There are multiple jobs. So for example, if you want to work on data centers, there's one, and it's not Monroe. There's one like in the outsides of Seattle. So for example, if you want to work in a data center, there are jobs there. So anything that you would like to do, what I would do if I was you, is go to the career site and see what opportunities or what job you might like. Some of them don't require a college degree, some of them do. So it really depends what you would like to do. And what I also suggest is if you like any other company that's not Microsoft, which is fine. Like at the end of the day, it's what you like, is try to do internship if you get to go to college. Because I don't know if it was Danny or Adrian who said it, but like try something. And if you like it, then continue. But if you do an internship in tech and you ended up hating it, then that's fine too. At least you learn that that's not what you like. But I think internships are a good way to enter to a job, call it Microsoft or any other company that you're interested. So at least you have that taste and feel of what it would be for you to work there. And if you're not trying to go through the college path, then find out what are those jobs that you could do without having that degree.
I just want to chime in that I love that both her and Adrian, and I think everybody said, find out what you want to do, but also find out what you don't want to do. And I've stressed that with the students the last 2 weeks, that it's such an important part. You may think you're going to love to do this thing, and then you do it and you're like, oh. Mm-hmm. So it's really, I love that everybody's also saying that too. Like, it's a great thing everybody needs to understand.
Yeah, absolutely. Like when you're sitting in the direct sun for 2 hours looking for harbor porpoise.
Exactly. It's not always glamorous.
Let's see here. I think, Bea, I know you probably want to get to sleep, but Danny, we have a list of questions for you. Anyone else have questions for Bea before she signs off and goes? I mean, what time is it there? 11, 12?
It's about, midnight.
Thank you for staying up for us. We appreciate that. So students, if you don't have anything else for Bea, we're going to kindly let her hit the hay here. But Danny, I've copied and pasted a few questions. So Bea, thank you for sharing your expertise. And I look forward to following you. I just followed you on Instagram. So I'm going to follow your journey, and thanks for all you do in the tech side of things for sure.
Right back at you. Appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
All right. Take care. So Danny, thank you for hanging in there. I appreciate it. We have some fun questions for you real quick. And if anyone else has questions for Danny, go ahead and type them in. So the first one that was before Adrian spoke was, what is the largest animal you've encountered?
Largest animal, well, at the aquarium, it's that stingray that I showed you a photo of. It's definitely our largest fish that we have there. As far as in the wild, if that was the question, I got a chance to see manta rays. That's probably the largest. Actually, when we were in Guam doing that coral restoration work, we had a couple of manta rays just show up. So we got very distracted, as you can imagine, that day.
Let's see here. What does a typical day look like for you at the aquarium?
That's a good question. It's kind of hard to say because it's really no 2 days are alike. I mean, you guys probably just were able to kind of see that in those photos. But I mean, a typical day, I'll come in, I do rounds, kind of like a doctor does rounds, but everyone at the aquarium does rounds where you walk around the exhibits that you take care of. Since I oversee an entire gallery, it's a little bit longer, but I have about 20 or so exhibits that I actually supervise, and then I have a team that actually directly works with those exhibits. But I'll come in, I do rounds, that's a solid hour in the morning. And rounds, I'm just putting eyes on all the animals that I'm responsible for. We're looking at things like just weights and coloration and, is there any aggression? Just trying to make sure that all the animals in our exhibits are thriving. And honestly, there's always something going on. So there usually two fish that are chasing each other, or maybe there's some breeding going on, things like that. So we're always constantly having to be on top of that, because one thing when you're working with animals, you really want to be proactive. If you're going to need to separate a couple of animals for whatever reason, you kind of want to do that before they get to each other. We do have sharks that fight sometimes, or fish that chase each other. It's usually related to breeding or seasonal cues, things like that. But going back to a typical day, I'm going off on a tangent here, but do rounds, check all the animals. I usually check in with my team. I'll do kind of what we call walkthroughs with each one of my staff members, where we actually look at their exhibits even closer. Lots of meetings, of course, we have lots of meetings. And then, usually we're in the field about once a week, once every 2 weeks. So we're out on the boat. That takes some time getting dive gear together. We do a lot of cleaning in the exhibits. You guys have probably all been to a public aquarium or a zoo, but by the time the guests arrive, we want the exhibits to be clean and presentable. So a lot of that work is happening 2 to 3 hours before we're open. So we all get in pretty early. We're doing a lot of diving before we open, a lot of cleaning, a lot of maintenance, things like that. So a lot of feeding, a lot of maintenance work. And then, yeah, just working with the animals closely every day.
Yeah. Wow. That's a lot. I'm surprised you ever sleep. What's your favorite and not favorite part of your job?
Favorite part would have to be getting out in the field. Yeah, I've been fortunate enough. The two major aquariums that I've worked at were both on the coast. So one was right on the Atlantic. Now, of course, I'm right off the Pacific, but I've always been fortunate enough to work at an aquarium right on the coast, which means we get to go out on the boat quite a bit. I have a lot of colleagues that work at aquariums in the middle of the country, and that's definitely usually what they're most jealous about, is that we can hop on the boat and get out to the ocean. So definitely my favorite part is the field work, whether it's just, we do a lot of surveying, things like that. We look at habitats. Sometimes we're out collecting animals. We do have a permit to collect animals for some of our exhibits. So sometimes we're doing some collecting. We do a lot of the conservation work that I mentioned earlier, like the abalone work. So definitely the field portion of things is what I enjoy the most. And then I'd say what I enjoy the least is probably the opposite of that, is as you can imagine, when I'm stuck at my desk for days and days and weeks at a time. We do also have an administrative side to the public aquarium world. There's a lot of paperwork and reports and just things like that. We do a lot of inspections. So there is a lot of desk work at my level, fortunately and unfortunately, of course. I originally got into this field because I do love animals. I had that passion that I mentioned, and I was able to do that for many years. And I think, like most industries, as you move up in your field, sometimes you get a little further removed from, the reason that you got into that field, and that's just the nature of it. But I fortunately, at least where I'm at now, I still have the option to, if I want to dive an exhibit, I can just put my wetsuit on. I'm much happier when I'm in my wetsuit than I'm in my aquarium clothes sitting at my desk. So yeah, I'd have to say just sitting at my desk doing paperwork, but it's an important part of the job as well.
We like to share that when we have students come through for the research here. We're like, okay, we get to go out and do the fun real field research, but the rest of the day is spent inside doing, looking for grants and analysis and all that stuff. And like, you have to have that balance, and that's an important thing for everybody to understand, that
yeah,
can't do the fun stuff all the time.
Yeah, no, it makes the fun stuff, that much more fun when you get out. So
exactly.
But it can be a lot of that type of work. But that goes back to what I said earlier about having that team. That's where delegating comes in a little bit, and everybody kind of has to pull their weight, and it doesn't seem so such a burden when that way it doesn't fall on one person.
Yep.
Danny, on Friday we had a little beach day with all the students, and some of them decided to go in. So the degrees here, I don't know, Cindy, what would you guess?
It's always like 55 degrees. Yeah.
55.
So what is it there? Because we did a polar plunge, if you will, but you do a dry suit or wetsuit, you said?
We do both, depending on the time of year. So I can tell you, we went diving last week, which was one of the photos I showed you there. And the temperature, so at the surface, we did a 90-foot dive that day. At the surface was about 65, 66. And when we got down to depth at exactly 90 feet, it was 54. So that was a little chilly, but we were only down there for a few minutes, so it wasn't too bad. So we're wearing wetsuits right now, but usually through October, after October, the water temp starts to come down. And then, usually early next year, winter, we'll switch over to dry suits. I had never seen a dry suit until I moved out here, and there's no looking back now. I love my dry suit.
We came from Florida, so we learned to scuba dive there. And we haven't scuba dived here yet because like 80-degree water.
Oh yeah. 55. Yeah, same with me. Growing up in Miami, we used to put just the tank on your back, no wetsuit, nothing. And, that doesn't work here.
No.
So someone else asked, do corals eat?
Do they eat? Absolutely. Yeah. So a lot of corals are going to be photosynthetic, but some are not. Some actually do not have that symbiotic algae that the photosynthetic corals have. And those guys definitely have to eat. That's the only way they actually get nutrients and energy. So yes, and even the photosynthetic ones, you know, they can be like 90-95% photosynthetic. They still need to take in some food too. So absolutely, corals definitely eat. They have mouths. They have those tentacles you guys are familiar with, but those tentacles are completely designed to bring food to their mouths.
Wow, that's cool. The symbiotic algae, they help make food for the coral to eat on there?
Yeah, so a lot of corals and anemones and other animals have it's called zooxanthellae, and it's an algae that lives inside, and the zooxanthellae photosynthesizes, and that produces nutrients for the coral. So the coral actually will feed. So the symbiotic relationship comes in. The coral provides a house basically for the algae, and the algae provides food for the corals. But like I said, they still need to take in other food, other just zooplankton.
Yeah, that's genius. It's like having a McDonald's in your belly or something.
Right.
What did you have to do to get your scuba certification?
I didn't do much. I found a scuba shop close to me. Like I said, I think I was like 16 or 17, and I just found it. I found it through a friend, a local scuba shop. But yeah, just, you know, there's probably, and that was, oh gosh, over 20 years ago. So I'm sure now it's even easier. There's probably so many places that you can get certified. So yeah, I would just check. And you know, most states have different ages. Some, I think Florida now, you can actually get certified at 10 years old, which would have been amazing. Either I didn't know that, or it was a different rule when I was there, but I would have loved to have gotten scuba certified at 10 years old. But yeah, check your local rules with the state you're in. But yeah, I would just say find a local dive shop, or that's probably your best bet. They could always point you in the right direction.
I think we just had to do a couple in classroom stuff that you had to go through, and then you have the pool dive, and then you have a couple open water dives, and then you're good. So it doesn't usually take that long. That was 9 years ago.
Yeah, it can be a pretty quick process now,
Yeah.
you know, for basic open water, for you guys, if anyone's just looking to kind of get a feel for it and see if they like it. And then of course, you know, there's so many places to advance after that. So like at the aquarium, we're actually all scientific divers. We're considered scientific divers. So that's a certification process that takes a while, but we've all accomplished that. And, you know, we get rated to different depths and different forms of diving, like nitrox. We actually also have a few folks who are rebreather divers. We have rebreather units at the aquarium, which we use. And those are really cool, you know, where you don't produce any bubbles. You're basically breathing your own air. So we're constantly trying to, you know, evolve in that area. We're not necessarily pushing the limits, but we definitely want to go deeper and stay down longer and see some of the habitats that we don't usually get to see when you're just on a regular scuba.
Do you ever free dive?
Not here so much. I actually started free diving. That was my number one passion when I was in Miami. I was a huge free diver, and that's kind of, you know, I mentioned snorkeling. You know, I started snorkeling when I was a little kid, and then once I was kind of a little bit older, I got into free diving and did a lot of free diving. We used to go out to the Bahamas a lot and do things like that. And, you know, free diving can only get you so far, but I remember getting down, you know, 40, 50 feet, and it was a whole different world from snorkeling. And that's kind of, I remember that thought in my head was just like, man, if this is what's down at 40, what's down at like 80? So it's just that curiosity takes over.
Have you met or heard of Sylvia Earle?
Yeah, she was here actually at the aquarium. Oh boy, it's probably been 3, 4, 5 years, but she did a lecture here, and it was amazing to see that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I think
she's going to be the conference plenary speaker for the Society for Marine Mammalogy this December.
Awesome. Right on. That's very cool.
Yeah.
one last question that I have written down, which might have already been answered kind of from your least favorite part of the job, but it's what's the hardest part of your job? So maybe that would be a different answer.
Yeah, I would say it's different. I'd say the hardest part, which isn't necessarily my least favorite, I already mentioned that. I'd say the hardest is just probably managing such a large collection of animals. they can be unpredictable sometimes, but, again, that's kind of our job, is to do those rounds and be proactive. But just managing such a large collection sometimes is extremely challenging. We have holding systems behind the scenes that our guests don't see. And those are mostly for holding animals that, again, are either breeding, there might be some fighting going on, some aggression. We do our best to only put compatible species together. But things happen. Animals get older. They get along when they're small, and then they start getting bigger, and somebody wants to become the alpha. You start getting some fighting, some aggression. So now you have animals that don't get along anymore. So you have to kind of figure out, okay, what are we going to do with these? How are we going to display them? Make sure everyone's happy and thriving. And then, of course, there's things like breeding, just seasonal things. So there's a lot of moving around. We're incredibly good at catching our sharks and rays and all our fish. A lot of our animals are stretcher trained. We do a lot of training with our animals. That blue stretcher you guys saw, many of our sharks are actually trained to swim into that stretcher, and that takes years to get to that point. But it's just so much less stress for us and the animals, of course. But to answer the question, I'd say just managing a collection where you're constantly moving animals or separating animals or trying animals together. So don't get me wrong, it's not a part that I don't enjoy. It's just probably the hardest part, but I enjoy it. It keeps you thinking, it keeps you kind of on your toes, and you can't just assume, okay, everyone's in their exhibit, everyone's happy, we're good for the next couple of years, because that's not going to be the case.
So I think that goes into a lot of people don't think about animals being individuals. And that's something that, even down to fish, I mean, honestly, not every fish is the same. Not every animal, they do have personalities to whatever degree they have for that species. But I think it's an important thing to know for that kind of work, especially.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the things we always share with some guests, and they're always fascinated. They assume some animals have that personality, like our giant Pacific octopus, right, or our penguins, certainly our mammals. But it's true for, stingrays and sharks and fish as well. They definitely have their little personalities, and it's cool to watch those change as they get older. Because like I said, sometimes we have animals as juveniles, and then as they get older, I guess kind of like humans, they kind of get into their own, and they decide
their own ideas.
Right. They become very independent, and they decide, okay, I'm going to be the alpha in this exhibit now. Right. I used to be low on the totem pole, and now I want to run this tank. So
or something else changes, right? Some other individual goes out, and then they're like, oh, now's my time.
That's exactly right. Yeah. So we deal with a lot of hierarchies when it comes to fish, and you got to be really in tune and just know that if you remove one animal, that's going to change the behavior of everyone else in the exhibit. So you got to be ready to anticipate that. So we do, when we move a shark, we'll have a meeting about it. Like, okay, what is this? What chain reaction is this going to set off by moving this shark? Is this an alpha?
Possibilities is going to happen?
Yeah, because you're right. You'll see another shark all of a sudden, like, okay, so-and-so's gone. I'm the new king in town. So it's kind of cool to watch too, because we can anticipate that sometimes. And there's times where it's like, there you go. We knew that was coming.
Right.
But there's times also where like, wow, we did not see that coming. So now we might have to, get everyone suited up in their wetsuits. Now we got to move a shark to a holding system because he's not behaving or for whatever reason. So never a dull moment, like I said.
Has anyone gotten bitten or yourself by a shark?
We've never had any serious injuries with sharks, knock on wood. And I've never really been bitten by a shark. I've had some little nicks here and there, but no, I've been fortunate. The worst I've had stingray barbs. I have been hit by a stingray twice. Now, that wasn't at the aquarium. That was out in the ocean. One time was just surfing. One time we were just out there. There's a lot of stingrays off our coast here, and I'm sure I spooked them. It was totally my fault, but yeah, I've been hit with a stingray in the foot a couple times, and it's definitely painful, but that's probably the worst I've had to deal with.
Yeah, it makes me think of Steve Irwin.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, these are definitely smaller stingrays, nothing that big.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Danny. I appreciate your time and you sharing your story and your experience. And students, I hope you guys learned something from this. So if you guys don't have any other questions, we will see you this week later. But Danny, thank you. And students, thanks for logging on here today. And
And
Yeah.
I'll see you guys. I'll see you guys tomorrow, and make sure you bring your Chromebooks to work on your presentations.
Yeah, thank you guys again for having me and giving me the chance to share all this. And I put my email on the presentation there. If anyone ever has a question that pops up, feel free to email me.
Awesome. Wonderful, Danny. This was awesome and amazing. So thank you guys and take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.